That's because you had no food. Now, if the search has been called off, then we're on our own to save our lives, and we've got to eat.
Eat what?
No. It means we should eat the dead.
This should be good for the cutting.
All right. Yeah.
The film begins with a plane flying over the snowy peaks of the Andes. It's 1972. A Uruguayan rugby team, along with their friends and relatives, is heading to Chile for a match. The cabin is full of excitement. The young guys are laughing, taking pictures, joking, and discussing the upcoming game. In their eyes, enthusiasm, youth, and complete confidence in the future. In addition to the laughing guys and their families, there are also crew members on board. Everyone is chatting, and the guys are taking a group photo. Nando Parrado tells her mother how beautiful the mountains are outside the window, but her mother replies that she is afraid of heights and doesn't want to look. Her daughter reassures her, saying that they will land in 20 minutes. Nando Parrado and his friend decide what is more important, girls or rugby. His friend asks to sit by the window to admire the mountains. In the cockpit, the pilots decide to fly over a thunderstorm, through dense clouds, hoping to stay on schedule. One of the pilots grabs a mug of tea, and the other announces they are gaining altitude, 10,000 feet. He asks the stewardess to move the passengers to their seats as they enter a turbulent zone. But the guys, engrossed in their conversation, ignore the instructions. One of them even plays around by turning on the intercom, which causes a sharp reaction from the stewardess. However, everyone becomes tense when the plane starts shaking and loses altitude. They all feel something is wrong, jokes end, and experiencing the G-force, passengers buckle their seatbelts. They pray and hold their loved ones' hands. When the plane emerges from the clouds, it becomes clear. They are too low, just a few meters away, jagged rocks. The pilots desperately try to gain altitude, but it's already too late. The tail of the plane clips the rock, and then the wing is torn off. The metal rips like paper. The rear part of the plane disintegrates, and people are thrown out. Among them, the guy who had been joking on the intercom. He didn't manage to buckle up. The altitude rapidly drops, and many passengers lose consciousness due to the G-force. The fuselage, like a rocket, crashes into the snow and continues sliding at high speed. It hits a hill and stops, the impact tearing out all the seats and smashing some passengers to pieces. The metal is immediately covered with snow. Everyone looks around. Who survived? Who is injured? Some find it difficult to breathe due to the altitude. Some of the surviving guys immediately begin to help others and tend to the wounds. Federico has a deep gash in his leg, down to the bone, but he says everything is fine. At that moment, a woman screams in pain and complains about her legs. They find their friend Alberto nearby and see that he is not moving.
Alberto. Dead.
I'm not dead.
But he also has both legs broken. Nando is most likely dead, as is his mother. Pablo has a piece of metal sticking out of his stomach, and he doesn't know whether it's a serious injury or not. Gustavo, a medical student, distracts the guy and pulls out the metal when the guy isn't paying attention. Some people have already managed to get out of the plane. One of the guys sits down and smokes, while another makes his way to the cockpit and sees that one of the pilots is dead, and the other is asking for water. One woman has her legs crushed by the seats and cannot be freed. Roberto Conso, also a medic, goes to the pilot and lets the dying man suck some melted snow from a rag. The guys ask the pilot how to contact the ground, but the radio isn't working. There's no electricity. The pilot asks them to take a gun from his bag and finish him off, but they refuse. Everyone who can move gathers outside. They take the covers off the seats to use them as blankets, as the temperature will drop significantly at night. Some are not too worried and think they will be rescued soon. Inside, a hysterical mechanic is hiding under a jacket. This jacket he took from the injured Nando Parrado. He seems to have started losing his mind, shouting loudly and resisting. Roberto threatens to kill him if he does it again. Bobby is always calm and smokes cigarette after cigarette. Now he has taken a drink from the wine he found with the pilots.
Want some wine?
Thanks.
Bobby is probably the only one not worried about the situation. The team captain, Antonio, has now taken on the role of leader. The survivors have settled a bit, trying to warm up and fall asleep, but the woman with broken legs constantly screams and prays.
Shut up! Shut up, you stupid cow! I'll punch your face in!
As evening sets in, The cold intensifies to the point where it becomes almost unbearable. Inside the broken fuselage, the temperature drops below freezing. People huddle together, shivering and chattering their teeth. So Antonio lifts Roy, who doesn't want to get up because of the cold, and Rafael, to block the hole with seats and suitcases. They succeed. Nando Parrado lies covered in snow. His body is half covered with snow, and he is barely breathing. Two of his friends, not believing he is dead, lie him between themselves to warm him with their bodies. Everyone helps each other, and thanks to their combined efforts, they survived the first night. But unfortunately, not all of them did. Roberto commands that all the bodies be brought outside. Susanna's legs are also injured. They are completely cold. The mechanic has lost his mind, but fortunately, he provides crucial information. The radio, which everyone had hoped would work, cannot function without a battery.
The batteries are in the tail,
and it was located in the tail section of the plane, the very part that detached first and fell somewhere in the mountains. On board the plane that crashed in the snowy Andes, there are no first aid kits, no life jackets, no warm blankets, nothing that could ease the survivors' plight. People are disoriented. Shock gives way to the realization of the grim reality. The bodies of the dead are carefully laid out on the snow near the fuselage, as if it's a temporary cemetery amidst the pure white emptiness. Among them is the woman who agonizingly died during the night. Carlitos feels ashamed for shouting at her, not showing compassion during her final hours. Now, looking at her lifeless body, he feels guilt and bitterness. The guys say a prayer over the bodies. Meanwhile, the survivors thoroughly search the plane for food. Their entire food supply fits into one small pile. Several packets of snacks, 4 bottles of wine, and half a bottle of rum. This is pitifully little for 27 people. However, among the luggage, they find a suitcase full of cigarettes. Now cigarettes become their strange currency, and a way to distract themselves a little. The captain tries to instill some hope. He assures them that as soon as the snowstorm dies down, rescuers will surely come. The key is to hold on. Right now they have a strict ration. Each person gets a cap full of wine and a tiny piece of chocolate. Even Nando, who is still unconscious, gets his share. The friends make sure of it, as a gesture of solidarity and belief in his return to life. Suddenly, a hum is heard. A plane is flying somewhere in the sky. It can't be seen through the snow curtain, but the sound wakes everyone up. Someone jumps up, someone runs outside, shouting and waving their hands. But the white veil hides everything. At night, the temperature drops, and the bodies of the dead are covered with snow. The Motal couple, huddled together, quietly remembers their children and home. The guys shiver and try to warm up. Everyone is very upset, some are even crying. By morning, the storm passes, and the sun's rays pierce the cold air, beginning to reflect off the metal wreckage. One of the guys figures out that if you place snow on the curved backs of seat metal pieces and put them in the sun, the snow will start to melt. Antonio immediately marks the area so that no one urinates there and they can take the snow from there. Roy is irritated and vents his anger on the others.
This could help. There's things to do here, you know?
Stuff it, Roy.
Susanna has completely weakened, but her brother Nando has finally regained consciousness. He immediately learns that his mother has died. Now he is taking care of his sister. The sun comes out, and another plane flies over the crash site. People shout, wave their clothes. The poor souls are sure they've been spotted, thinking the pilot waved his wing at them. Riding the wave of this hope, the rationing is lifted. Wine, the only thing they have in abundance, can now be drunk as much as they want. People laugh and hug, as if the nightmare has finally ended. That night, they fall asleep with smiles on their faces, feeling that it will soon all be behind them. When the captain fell asleep, they devoured the chocolate. The next day, lying on the snow, they all wait for rescue. Seeing that their supplies are almost gone, Antonio goes wild. Even if the rescue operation has already started,
What the hell is this?
it could take days or even weeks. It was discovered that everyone ate something except Javier and Lillian. There is no food left. Bobby expresses the unpleasant thought. If they've been noticed, why haven't they dropped food by now? The 5th day after the crash has come to an end. When the guys were building hammocks for the wounded, they found a radio and took it to the leader. The signal is very weak, but it's there. Nando doesn't leave his sister's side. He knows that a loved one is dying. When this happens, he will leave. taking with him the pilot's meat. Another cold and hungry night. In the morning, the guys make an antenna from copper wire, which they gathered from the airplane equipment, and thanks to it, the radio begins to pick up weak signals. They manage to hear that the rescuers didn't find the plane wreckage, which raises doubts about their chances of survival. The guys with the wounded legs are getting worse.
Have you looked at Alberto's legs?
Federico Arando, feeling his strength fading, promises that he will return home.
My name is Federico Aranda, and I will return.
Realizing that staying in place is impossible, 5 people decide to climb the mountain to see what's around them and possibly find the tail of the plane where the radio's battery might be. They walk only a few meters, but exhaustion and lack of oxygen at the height start to take a toll on them. Every step is difficult. One of the guys, stuck in the snow, almost falls off a cliff. At the last moment, they grab him and barely pull him back. Without reaching their goal, the group returns. Alberto finds a map, and perhaps with it, they can escape. But without food, they are helpless, like kittens. At night, the survivors read a prayer in unison. Another day has passed, the 9th day. Desperate Antonio cries and no longer wants to take responsibility. Nando informs the others that his sister Susana has died. He asks that she be with him for the night. In the morning, Nando takes his sister's body out and removes her jacket. The 9th day has arrived. Antonio finds out that the search has been called off. They are considered dead, but the captain is unable to tell the others. Nando, however, doesn't see this as a problem. He gathers the survivors and tells them that now they can only rely on themselves. And also, they need to eat. They need to eat the dead. When Nando leaves, a discussion begins. Many of them are religious and fear angering God. Others try to convince them that the soul has left the body and what is outside is just meat. Now, they will pray and decide what to do tomorrow morning. Roberto persuades his comrades to agree, and most are ready to take this terrible step to survive. The meat can be cut with a shard of glass, but who will do it? Roberto volunteers to bear the sin. It's very hard to cut the meat. It's frozen. After cutting a small piece, he eats it raw in front of everyone. Gustavo follows, cutting a bigger piece. The others also approach the bodies. Nando worries that they've eaten his sister, but it was some man, they don't know exactly who. After eating, 3 people set off to search for the plane's tail. Tonight, everyone prays for them. In the morning, Ribeiro cuts pieces and lightly roasts them. In the sun, he assumes that the trio didn't survive. It was too cold during the night, -30 or 40 degrees, but they are still alive, very frozen, but incredibly happy about the sun. They find a seat in the snow, and in it, they find the burned body of a rugby player who fell out of the plane. Nearby, there's another one. Gustavo collects the personal belongings of the dead to return them to their families later. Even in such a situation, the guys find a way to have fun, laughing as they slide down the plane parts. Federico's leg smells terribly. Even after treatment, it turns out he has gangrene. 3 of the guys return, and everyone is very happy to learn that they survived. At night, the survivors plan their next venture, hoping to find the plane's tail and use it to improve their chances of rescue. To warm up, they throw everything they can into the fire. Money, a guitar, anything that doesn't have value in their current situation. Antonio, who resisted the idea of cannibalism more than anyone else, finally agrees. He admits that if he doesn't survive, his body could be used as food for others. This amuses everyone. Lillian tells her husband that she wants another child. He worries that his wife isn't eating, and she won't survive. The woman promises she'll definitely eat tomorrow. That night, the plane is hit by a massive avalanche. The survivors are buried under the snow and now struggle to dig themselves out. They manage to save many, but unfortunately, Captain Antonio couldn't be saved. He suffocated. Also, the guy with the wounded stomach died. Javier found his wife, but Lillian was no longer breathing. There are fewer and fewer of them. In total, the avalanche claimed 8 more lives. In the morning, despite their efforts, they cannot break through to the surface. The blizzard rages with renewed strength, leaving no chance for rescue. Today is Raphael's birthday, and his friends, despite everything, have made him a cake, not from cream and sugar, but from snow, decorated with an unfinished cigarette. This symbolic gesture is more than just a joke. It becomes their way of maintaining human dignity in the most horrible conditions. It's time to dig out the bodies and bring them to the surface to bury them with dignity. Alberto, in a state of deep emotional shock, says that now he feels his closeness to God more than ever. He feels that he has gained some new understanding of life and death. Federico, moved by his words, hugs his friend, trying to support him in this difficult moment. But unfortunately, the next morning, Federico wakes everyone up with the news that his friend Alberto has died. He was only 21 years old. This shock becomes another reminder for everyone of the fragility of life. They bury all the bodies, reading a prayer.
Rest in peace.
The 50th day has arrived. One of the guys says that they should wait a few more days until the weather warms up, but the others disagree. Having made a good stock of meat, the guys decide that it's time to move out. Javier refuses to eat after his wife's death. Nando yells at him and demands that he remember the children. The man must eat. 3 people set off to search for the tail again. Roy looks helplessly at the pile of radio wires that he has to sort out. He says that he doesn't know much about this, but he'll try to do something. He only has a small radio school course behind him. This is unbelievable. The group of 3 found the tail, and Roberto found the chocolate that was in the suitcase. He immediately pounced on it. He also ate the toothpaste. Roberto is happy. They have the battery, and tomorrow they can go back. They decided to spend the night by the tail, which turned out to be 3 hours' walk from the camp. However, Nando suggests continuing the journey to get to Chile. In the morning, they discover that the battery is so heavy that they can't carry it back to the camp. In that case, they need to bring the radio here. But for that, Roy must come. And as it turns out, Roy doesn't like the idea. The guys return to the camp for the radio. When they arrive, they find out that Roy is not very good with electronics. He panics and says he only worked with electronics as a kid. If the radio doesn't work, they'll have to go into the mountains. They try to connect the radio to the battery, but unfortunately, they can't make it work and need to return to the camp. Before leaving, the 4 find a photo with the cake and get stuck looking at it. They send it back, and a blizzard starts again. Roy falls to his knees. He can't go any further. Finally, poor Nando heroically carries him to the camp, and only when he enters the plane does he notice Federico in the distance, who died from gangrene. He never fulfilled his promise to return home. The 61st day, it has noticeably warmed up. Some of them even took off their clothes. Carlitos is sewing a warm sleeping bag for the journey. Nando persuades Roberto to set out again, but he says the sleeping bag isn't ready yet. At this moment, they're told that Rafael has died. This news finally pushes Roberto to go on the journey. The same trio, Nando, Roberto, and Tintin, went on the expedition. Carlitos dreamed of green fields, and he took it as a sign that his friends would succeed. The other guys watched them with hope. The trio of brave men climbs a rock. They survived the night and were about to hope they reached the top, but they had to climb further. At one point, Roberto, unable to handle the exhaustion, rolls down the rock and almost falls into the abyss, but manages to grab its edge. Nando, gritting his teeth, crawls to him and, stretching out his hand with all his might, pulls him up. Tintin, not wasting time, grabs them by their straps and pulls them up. With difficulty, they made it, to survive another night in the huge sleeping bag, which seemed to be their only protection from death. The next morning, Roberto notices a line on the horizon that reminded him of a road. He was sure they had to go back and take that path, because the mountain before them was too high, and going further would be pointless. But Nando and Tintin, disagreeing, decided to leave their things here and continue the ascent. Roberto stayed behind, and they continued to climb alone. Nando finally reached the top and tells Roberto to come up. Everything is fine, but the medic didn't see anything good up there, just mountains. Nando points to the snow-free mountains. They need to go there, but it's at least 50 miles away, and Roberto wants to go back to the camp. But Nando persuaded him with his inspiring speech. They sent Tintin back and went into the unknown. 10 days passed since they left the camp. They finally reached the rivers and green Chilean meadows, where the air became lighter and the ground softer. They couldn't believe they had made it through all these miles, but more challenges lay ahead. Meanwhile, back in the camp, where the rest of the group stayed, the hope of rescue had almost vanished. However, soon they heard the familiar sound of helicopter blades. At first, it was just a rustle, but with each moment, it grew louder. The survivors in the camp, despite their fatigue and despair, couldn't contain their joy. They started laughing and shouting, realizing that rescue was finally near. The helicopter was already in the air, and they were finally going home. The film is dedicated to the 29 who perished and the 16 who survived. People fought for their lives for 72 days. Many died right after the crash, and the rest fought for survival, including resorting to cannibalism to survive. Nando Parrado and Roberto Canessa covered huge distances to find help. The survivors were diagnosed with altitude sickness, dehydration, frostbite, scurvy, broken bones, and malnutrition. Later, the rescuers returned to the crash site and buried the bodies of the deceased under rocks and fuselage debris.